Hey, it's your friend SJ and welcome to the Wellness and Wellies podcast. Hey friend, it has been a while since we last spoke, and today's episode really is about catching you up, what's been going on, and also what the podcast is going to look and sound like going forwards. And I just want to say thank you so much. If you have stuck with me, you've still turning up and listening to these episodes, I really appreciate you. But I know by the end of this episode that you're going to have a really good understanding why I have had a bit of a break and why I actually feel now I'm in a place that I can talk to you about these things, and hopefully my experiences are going to help you. And of course, I'm always going to add the caveat in here. I am a personal trainer. I'm a nutrition coach. I am not a qualified doctor. I am sharing my experience, my own thoughts, my own research around these particular topics. Now, that being said, I just want to do a couple of housekeeping type things as well with you. So if you want to reach out, you want to chat, you want to ask me any questions, I have set up an account over on TikTok, which I have linked in the comments below. I'm using the Wellness and Wellies across all the platforms now, so you can find me nice and easily. And if you want to send me an email, my email, of course, is in the show notes too. So let's get started on today's episode. Let's talk about life over the past few months, and let me fill you in all of the crazy. So if we rewind to the start of this year, about mid-February, myself, my family, my daughter and her dad, Tim, we all moved from Dorset in the UK to Shropshire, which is about 3.5 hours north. So we kind of live on the border with Wales now. And we moved into a house that we knew was going to be a temporary home for a short while. So we had, all of the upheaval of moving, all of the stress of packing and sorting out stuff and all of these kind of things. And the week before we moved, we lost one of our 4 dogs, Aero, who was 13 years old, sadly just old age, but it was a really, really hard time for us. We lost him. We were packing, we were moving, we were saying goodbye to friends. Chloe was saying goodbye to her friends at school. We moved, we got in the house, we got ourselves kind of sorted. Tim started his new job. Chloe started a new school. We had a lot of drama with her new school. And one of the things I will say in terms of school, if you ever find your child maybe starts a new school, starts a new class, and their behavior completely changes and you really don't kind of get it and they just don't see themselves, really listen to them and really listen to your child and listen to your gut. Because what turned out for us, the situation was that Chloe was in a school that just did not work for her. She'd come from the most beautiful, gorgeous school in Dorset. We put her into a school in a new area that we thought she was going to be happy in, but the school, the approach that the teacher took just did not work for her. And the head teacher and the classroom teacher were just not willing to work with us either to try and kind of make life and the transition easier for Chloe. So I pulled her out, I took her off role. I have been home educating her now for a number of months, and we are going to be at a point now where she's going to be doing what we call in the UK flexi schooling. So we found this gorgeous little school for her that has 20 children in it from the age of 5 up to 11 years old, what we call a primary school here in the UK. And there's only 20 children, all different ages. So it's really not like a traditional school. It's far more relaxed. And she's going to be going in there 2-3 days a week. And then the rest of the week, she's going to be homeschooling and home educating, home learning, whatever you want to call it, with me, which I think is going to be a really, really good option for her, because it allows her to have that experience of school, which she did enjoy at her old school in Dorset, but it's also going to give her some more freedom, give us some more freedom to do some more traveling, and also it's going to give her the opportunity to do some clubs and things like that that she wouldn't necessarily get the chance to do in school. So we went through all of that. we were preparing ourselves for the second house move. So we are now in what is our, hopefully, long-term home. It's a really gorgeous, lovely, like big farmhouse, and the house was being renovated and updated for us. So that was why we had to move into one house and then move into this one. So of course, like all of that process is quite stressful. Moving house again, just packing your stuff and picking up your life and doing all of that again. And literally as we were going through that, we found out that one of our other dogs had a tumor on his spleen. Our gorgeous golden retriever Comet. You might have seen some pictures of him on social media. He really was like one of those like absolute dogs in a million, the most beautiful soul and just so gorgeous. And the tumor, unfortunately, he was booked in to have surgery, and it was a couple of days too late for him, and his tumor broke, or whatever you want to describe, and he just went downhill, and we had to make the really hard decision to put him to sleep, and that was a huge loss for us. So we've lost 2 dogs, 2 house moves, a whole set of drama around school with my daughter Chloe. So yeah, it's certainly been like a really stressful 6 months. And we are like the start of September. So of course we're kind of in the middle of harvest right now. So that's certainly been pretty stressful. And I think the reason I'm saying all of this is not because like it's, oh yeah, poor me, my life's so difficult. Because of course we all have our own like challenges. But we talk about health and wellness, and in particular on this podcast. And I know that those of you that listen to me, you're really resonating with the episodes that I'm sharing around menopause and perimenopause, which is what I'm going to kind of shift and talk about a lot more with you. I think it's important to acknowledge these periods in our life where we are under a lot of stress. And sometimes things are going to give, and it's okay to step away from things for a period of time. And I think it's also important to remember as well the impact that stress has on your body, particularly if you are perimenopausal, your hormones are all over your place, you are struggling with, high levels of cortisol. And I think for me, I have really found over the past 6 months just how much stress has impacted my menopause symptoms, in particular, like feeling tired, burnt out, exhausted, like mood swings, like all over the place, and weight gain. I really did not change my diet significantly. I'm still exercising. I actually bought myself a Peloton bike, which I absolutely love, and I'll talk to you more about that on another day. So I hadn't changed all of these things, but my stress levels were really, really high. And I am going to do a whole episode around cortisol, stress, and the impact that it can have on your body and how you can support your body with that. But I just wanted to kind of side note to that be aware of your stress, because your stress is really going to impact your body externally, internally, and if you're struggling with perimenopause and the symptoms, it's probably going to make those things worse. Now, on today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my HRT journey. It's about 18 months now since I started talking about menopause, talking about HRT, and the way that menopause is impacting my life, the things that I'm doing to, reduce those impacts, and hopefully these things that I talk about are going to help you. Because the more I dig into it and the more I learn about this and the more experiences I have with different health professionals around this, the more kind of angry that I find myself getting. And that's not just because of the hormone rage. The more I feel frustrated that we as women really are massively underrepresented when it comes to health, and that our health is not considered important, and how many of us are putting up with things that we don't really need to put up with. But when you only have, like we often do here in the UK, like 10 minutes of an appointment with your doctor, like that's not enough time to really talk about how you're feeling, like the effects of your hormones and what's going on with your body. So I really hope that this podcast is a space for you to talk and listen with me, and for us to kind of come together and share our experiences so we can learn from one another and advocate for ourselves. And if you have a friend who, is going through this, but you find it difficult to talk to about, like share this podcast episode with them. Because I think as with anything, like, when we talk about like what it's like to be a mum, what it's like, after you've had a baby, like we just don't have enough of a conversation about these things. And it's really important that we open our mouths and we talk about how we're feeling so that we can help the next woman behind us who is about to experience these things as well. And ultimately, that's really what I hope for you. Now, there are a few episodes in the bottom of the show notes that I've linked for you. There's a couple from February where my friend Lindsay last year was talking about her experience with perimenopause, HRT. They're really powerful episodes and really like dig into mental health. And I really want to I'm so thankful for Lindsay for sharing her journey. She actually went on national television in the UK on ITV and shared her experiences of perimenopause and how much it impacted her, because her sort of side effects were so extreme. But it's so important that these people, that are going through this, talk about this so that it's normalized and so that we can advocate for ourselves to get better care and to get the care that we deserve. I have also linked in an episode as well from October in 2022, which was the first time that I went to the GP and I started to talk about my menopause symptoms and the things that I did to really advocate for myself. And I've also linked in the bottom of the show notes for you as well, a menopause charity website, which has some really great information. They're a charity based here in the UK. And they also have a symptom checklist. So you can have a look at those symptoms. And it's really important to remember, the reduction in estrogen in your body can affect literally every single cell in your body, because you have estrogen receptors in every single cell in your body, which is why there are so many different symptoms and why so many women have such individualized experiences of menopause. Okay, so let me share a bit about my HRT journey, and just to kind of give you a bit of background, talk about what's going on with me, and then perhaps you might want to come and share with me how you're doing. And of course, as I said earlier, I'm not a doctor, but I will by all means share any knowledge that I have with you. So back in October 2022, when I first went to the doctors to talk about hormones, perimenopause, and that sort of thing, I went there armed with knowledge. I had the symptoms checklist. I had an appointment over the telephone with my doctor. I did some blood tests because I was under the age of 45 in the UK. I had to have some blood tests done just to rule out any other things. And then I started taking progesterone and estrogen. Now, I took progesterone and estrogen initially, what's called transdermally, which is a patch that went on my skin. And because I was still having periods of some sort, I was cycling my patches. So I would have 2 weeks of just estrogen and then 2 weeks where I would have estrogen and progesterone. And if you think about, I often describe, and I did a TikTok video about this earlier, when you think about estrogen and progesterone, estrogen's your outdoorsy, happy, excitable, really sociable friend. And progesterone's your friend who wants to, put their comfies on and come around your house and drink wine, watch rom-coms and eat a tub of ice cream with you. And they balance each other out. And half of the challenge when it comes to HRT is figuring out how much estrogen you need and how much progesterone you need, and getting that balance right for you as an individual. And it takes time, and it takes trying different quantities, different types, and figuring out what it is that you need. So that being said, after 8 months, I really found that I was struggling with the second half, the 2 weeks where I was using progesterone. I found my mood really dropped. It was like Jekyll and Hyde. And I went back to my doctor. She was really lovely. And she switched my progesterone to a tablet form of progesterone, which is meant to be what they call body identical, called Utrogestan. And I was then taking 2 tablets of that for 2 weeks at the end of my cycle. And I would take those tablets before I went to bed because they make you tired and make you drowsy. So I was doing that for about 8 months, but I still found that I was still struggling massively with my mood on those 2 weeks. So the 2 weeks when I was taking progesterone, I just found my mood dipped massively. I was really depressed. To be honest with you, particularly with everything that's been gone over the last 6 months, I really, really felt my mood drop, and I was really, really down, and my head would go into some really negative places. And that's why I really think it's important that you listen to those episodes from my friend Lindsay, because she really sort of talks about the extreme version that she had, where her hormones were really impacting her mental health. And whilst mine probably weren't quite on the same level, I certainly really did feel very low, really lonely, isolated. And I used to, walk my dogs and just really have some horrible dark thoughts about, what the world would be like without me and whether or not anyone was going to miss me. And of course, that's not normal, particularly when, for 2 weeks of the month, I'm fine, I'm normal, I'm myself. And then for the other 2 weeks, I'm in this really, really low place. So I went back to my doctor here in Shropshire, where I live now, a couple of months ago. And I said, look, hey, I'm still struggling with this. This isn't working for me. And she said, well, you're probably struggling with progesterone, you might be sensitive to it. So she actually increased my dose of estrogen. So I did that for a couple of months, but again, I really felt like it wasn't hitting the mark, and my mind was still going into some pretty dark places when I went to take the progesterone tablets. So I decided to spend some money and go and see a specialist. And I know that this isn't always an option for everybody else, but we were in the fortunate position that we could afford to do this, that I have some health insurance that can contribute towards the cost of this as well. And I went and had a private consultation a few days ago with a specialist menopause clinic here in the UK. There's a group called Newton Health, and I will link their website again for you. But I would also suggest that if you aren't in the position to go to a private specialist, go and put pressure on your GP to see a specialist menopause clinic, to see a gynecologist. Really, really advocate for yourself. And for those of you in the US, if your healthcare affords, please go and see a specialist if you can, because seeing this particular person, being able to have a conversation with them for 45 minutes, and her also having read through all of my previous questionnaires that were really detailed about my mood, my lifestyle, all of this information that we know impacts menopause and impacts the way our bodies work. I learned so much in that 45 minutes. And now I've come away with a 3-page, really detailed report that I can take to my GP and share with them. And she shared all of this knowledge and information with me about medications and things that I can and can't access, and how to take medication, and things that we can change and things that we can tweak. And it's really, really opened my eyes to just how limited sometimes these conversations with our healthcare professionals can be. And I don't blame them, because, they're under pressure, they don't have time, they see people with a vast array of different needs. But what we need for women is the ability for us to go and see our frontline doctor, our GP, and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and for them to be able to refer us to a specialist as part of our healthcare process. In the same way as if you have, mental health issues, if you have a heart condition, you go and see a specialist. This needs to be taken seriously, because there are so many women who struggle with this, who do not know who to talk to, who to turn to, and we just put up with it because we think we have to put up with it, but we don't. So now I'm going to take a step back and down off my soapbox, because I think this is something that is really important and really something that we need to talk about more about. Now, in terms of HRT, you may or may not have some feelings about it. You may or may not be using it. I'd love to hear your experiences. So come and find me over on social media and tell me how you're doing. Tell me how you're getting on. But there's pros and cons of all things. And I do think the Menopause charity website is a really good place to look, because they talk about all the different types of HRT that is available, the side effects, the pros and the cons. But ultimately, really what you're looking for is, if you can take HRT and you decide that you want to take it, that the pros far outweigh the cons. And I can certainly say, even with the challenges that I face sometimes, those pros did outweigh the cons. And hopefully over time, I'm going to find a balance that really works for me, that works for my body, and is going to be, but doesn't also leave me in that dark place mentally. So I think for me, like, some of the main pros of using HRT have been having less hot flushes. And those things are a nightmare, like waking up in the night, like hot and sweaty, and having to go to the toilet and all of those kind of things. When my estrogen levels are low, I really feel that, and I really notice these. Having less brain fog, feeling like I can do my job better. Knowing as well, and I think this is one of the big things for me as well, is knowing that there are some really great long-term benefits to using HRT, and I suggest you go away and research those, because it's quite important. I also found that some of the ways of using HRT are quite easy. So I found, like, putting a patch on my thigh, my butt, fairly straightforward, and they actually sat there and they stuck there and they did their job. I think definitely, of course, like with all medications and things, there's cons to using this. Sometimes the patches, like the adhesive, can make your skin a little bit itchy. HRT does need tweaking over time. It needs revisiting because your hormones are changing. I personally have identified that I am sensitive to progesterone. And I'm going to kind of talk you through the whole private health process and some of the things that I discovered about myself. But I also found out that I have probably suffered with PMDD for most of my adult life. And I think one of the other cons of HRT is remembering to take your medication. That can be quite challenging. And then also the fact that not all doctors are on board with it. And this is where you really, really need to, do your research, get your knowledge, listen to podcasts like this, and and visit websites like the Menopause charity that I've linked below, so that you can arm yourself with all the knowledge that you need to really, really advocate for yourself. So there we go. My HRT besties at the moment are progesterone, estrogen, and I'm now just started taking testosterone, which in the UK you can only take privately because it's not licensed through the NHS. But if you're in Australia, you can. I'm not sure about the US. I think you can in the US as well. So those are the things that I'm taking at the moment, and I will keep you in the loop to how I'm getting on, how they're working. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you how you are doing, what HRT you're taking. If you're not taking it, what else are you doing to help manage your symptoms? And I'm going to be back next week with another episode, probably talking more about menopause and cortisol and how we can support our perimenopause, menopause bodies as we are experiencing stress and levels of cortisol that rise. So I hope this episode has been helpful. Have an amazing day, have an amazing week, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next episode.